think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ken Yarmosh. Thank you, Ken.
Sure.
Let's give him a hand.
So Pete didn't really give a good enough disclaimer that literally I walked in here and he asked me to speak. So this is a little bit off the cuff. I've been talking about wearables, Internet of Things a lot over the last really 6 months. So this will be a little bit of a formulation of those thoughts. And I thought maybe the best way to kind of start this off would be to talk a little bit about how we've kind of repositioned ourselves at Savvy Apps. Just briefly, I'm not trying to sell you on Savvy Apps. We just sell ourselves already, and I think we do fun work and good work. But look at our logo from last year moving into this year. We really saw going back into 2013 kind of the shift out of making applications just for smartphones, just for tablets, and really into a world where applications were the primary focus. So we had historically done just a lot of iOS work, Android work, native application development, so we're not doing web development. And we kind of saw as the progression happened throughout last year, a lot of other work, especially as it relates to sensors, the Internet of Things, wearables. We're part of the Glass Explorer program. And we really wanted to kind of move away from being limited just on those kinds of screens, because we see the world where, you know, we've been talking about this before it really even happened, walking into your house, you know, loading up an application on your fridge, having your fridge send you a message saying, hey, you're out of milk on the way home. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a view into how we started moving ourselves away from just the world of smartphones and tablets. And that'll kind of bring me over into, I'm going to use part of a presentation that I did a few weeks ago, and kind of, again, really set the table for the rest of the folks coming up here. So this won't be on the hands-on stuff, but anyone remember the now-defunct Bump app? Literally, Google shut it down, I think it was the 31st of January. And I kind of start off talking about the Internet of Things, beacons, and really wearables with Bump, because I think it was pretty frustrating to use, right? And also awkward. No one really wanted to bump each other. It wasn't really a fun thing to do. But the other thing that was kind of odd and interesting about Bump is the fact that even though we were next to each other, right, we both had the Bump app loaded up on our devices, it actually wasn't using anything with proximity and location in terms of Bluetooth or other kinds of alternatives to that, such as near-field communications. It was actually taking information, sending it all the way up to the internet and to some servers, and back down again, which is why you often have to bump, you know, your buddy several times. So I think it was an early example, and obviously they did well. Google bought them, but you know, if you go to Google, you basically go to Google to die. You know, they did great in terms of that, but I think it was just sort of an early example of what could be better when it comes to location and proximity. So, you know, when I look at what's happening with Bump and Bluetooth and beacons, really we're now moving into the world of BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy. Who's playing with Bluetooth Low Energy out there? Anyone today? So you know that really it's not a new version of Bluetooth. It's actually a whole separate way of dealing with location when it comes to proximity. And there's a couple things here that it's doing differently. First of all, the battery life, because of the way this operates, is a lot better. So if you buy one of the beacons out there, anyone play with the Ottomate beacon? Some of the different beacon hardware out there, they actually can run for up to 2 years without having the battery be changed out, and that's pretty significant. And as a result of that, you know, you can have these apps run for a lot longer in the background and work in these different ranges. So iBeacon in particular, when it comes to iOS 7, pretty much every iOS device in the last 3 years can actually use this kind of technology. And to kind of make it a little bit more real for you, this is actually a diagram from Ottomate in terms of how this technology kind of works, in case you haven't seen this happen, or in case you kind of can't get it from the basic overview here. But imagine you're walking through a store, and the store actually has a sale. You can actually get proximity marketing. So again, you have an application running that's using this new Bluetooth Low Energy, and it can actually entice someone to come into the store. Right, so they're now in the store. Instead of having to check in, it automatically can check them in. So you can get a check-in coupon at that point. Just on a side note, you know, a lot of times you go to a store, you might look for a Groupon or something, this actually gets presented to you right away in this environment. And then this is the cool thing, I think, versus what we've had to deal with is, with GPS, you couldn't get into a room like this and get navigation, right? So now with these beacons, if there were beacons installed throughout this location, even though we don't have access to the satellites with GPS, you actually can get indoor navigation, right? So you can actually get directed to a specific item in the store, purchase that item without even having to talk to someone. So you can see the contactless payment. Literally walk right out, again, using a beacon, hitting a beacon, and getting charged for that right away. So this is what's possible, and especially on iOS, with the iBeacon itself, this is pretty powerful with the number of devices, because every iOS device can actually act as one of these beacons and communicate back and forth to each other. So one thing that I like to show people is this is not 2 or 3 years away. This is actually screenshots from the new MLB at BAT application, where they're going to be rolling out this technology in select stadiums in 2014. So this actually, these screenshots were taken off of a Mashable post talking about this. But it shows you exactly that world, right? Where you walk up to the field, you start seeing information about the game. Tonight's pitchers, you can actually get the GPS bringing you over to your specific seat. The beacon technology helping you direct to your specific seat. And then also see certain coupons, right? So as you're walking through the stadium, hey, there's a coupon for a vendor that's nearby, and you can get those unlocking of special offers. Again, all of those could be done just passively versus what you have to do now, right? Everyone has to actually do the check-in itself. So this is something that we're seeing being rolled out in big venues. So what are some of the takeaways on this side? Well, number one, NFC, which Google had really been supporting, is pretty much dead. Anyone playing with NFC at this point? Yeah, so you kind of know that it's pretty much dying at this point, despite Google's best efforts. I think we're seeing beacons already doing a lot better than NFC had ever done up to this point. But really, there's some really neat things when it comes to context location. Again, being able to do that in an interior location compared to what we've been able to do up to this point. And then this is where I think kind of moving into the Internet of Things side of the house, a lot more applications in home and office itself. So who saw this come out of CES? The first internet toothbrush helping you brush your teeth in a really, really good way, like never before. Kind of maybe the Internet of Things jumping the shark, so to speak, but I do think it's neat, and it shows what the Internet of Things is all about, which are cheap sensors, internet-connected sensors, and it's really impacting and going into 2014 itself. The way we live, the way we shop, the way we brush our teeth. And just a sampling, and again, the folks coming up here will kind of get into the details here, but some of the stuff that we found interesting. We know that Nest was acquired by Google, obviously, so now Google can see what you're searching for, where you are, what the temperature is in your house, when you're home, all those good things, all connected in a nice little Google world. But there's a lot of other things out here that are pretty neat, and Mary Meeker, who tracks Mary Meeker? Every year she's got her state of the internet, calls these things the wearables, flyables, drivables, and scannables. And I think that's a good way to sort of reinforce this little world that we're coming into. One thing that I'd like to talk about as it comes to this stuff is we have an opportunity now for those of us who actually build these applications to start building, to be the first in the field, right? So this is an example. I think this is called, this is by SkyDroid. It's a golf app where there are obviously hundreds and hundreds of golf apps on the App Store, Google Play, so on and so forth. But you could be one of the first if you're going and building on in these markets. And then you have Recon Jet for another glass wearable. If you don't have Google Glass, I know a couple guys have Glass out there now. The Pebble watch is pretty neat, the SDK there. One of the reasons why I like this is you don't literally have to take anything out of your pocket, right? So you just look down. Anyone have a Pebble out there? Some Pebble love? No? Yes? Okay, cool. I met some of the Pebble guys last week in San Francisco, and they've invested a lot into their SDK, and they just had the App Store come out on iOS yesterday. So now you can go onto the App Store, browse the Pebble Watch, Pebble Watch apps itself, and also coming out on Android pretty soon. But I think this is the best way to stay in front of people, right? I mean, heads-up display on glass, look down on the watch. You don't have to pull anything out of your pocket, sort of those critical messages. Pretty neat stuff. Smart Things, got to mention them, right? DC Love, anyone from Smart Things out there? Cool. Really neat sort of connected home stuff here. We're obviously going to have someone come up and talk a little bit about the connected home, but I love this because it makes it accessible. I do a lot of talks to people who aren't developers, and this is something that is very accessible to them, right? I have buddies who were doing this 20 years ago, but were super engineers and software, hardware, everything. Now you plug this in and you're pretty much good to go. It's really simple, and I love this one specifically because I'm a pet owner. But having your dog or cat remind you before it's hungry. Anyone want this? This is from the new Tesla. Nice 17-inch connected internet screen. Talk about distracting, though, right? People are got pulled over for glass, which we'll talk about. But I mean, this is the ultimate distraction, right? I'm just gonna pull this puppy on the side of the road and just play with it for a while. But this is showing what's happening in the car. Contextual advertisements, if you're looking from a monetization angle. But I think just generally, the key thing here is this is what consumers are coming to expect, right? You have to have a screen everywhere in front of your face throughout the day. Go to sleep with the screen, wake up with the screen, walk into the bathroom, go into the car. The screen really is everywhere, or some kind of application is everywhere. Anyone pick out what that is on the bottom, what that's from? Yeah, exactly, little Lord of the Rings reference there, but obviously a lot of privacy concerns here that we haven't quite figured out yet, so I won't belabor that. I think this crowd kind of gets that. This is the first person that ever got a ticket for wearing glass. They actually got off because they didn't prove that glass was on, but there's a lot of legal concerns with this stuff as well, and that's something else that probably Pete will have another talk on those types of things sometimes in the future. Just kind of wrapping up here. I'll end with this. I don't know how many people are actually developers in the audience tonight. So probably about half or so. Whether you're a developer, marketer, product person, designer, I think this is a unique time where the playing field's being reset to go do some really interesting things. So when we're talking to customers, we're not looking at trying to build an app that just puts you on par with what was done a year or so ago. There's lots of those out there. Not saying smartphones and tablets are the old, and wearables and flyables and scannables and drivables and all these little ables are the new things of the future, but you can think about how all these things interact with each other, right? Come up with a better connected experience across all these different platforms. So I'll kind of end there. Again, trying to set the stage, so forgive me, this is last minute. Hopefully you guys got something out of this, and I'll turn it over to Pete. Yeah. Sure.
Am I good? Okay. All right. Great. So any questions for Ken? And this would also be a great part of our test. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about security issues? My brother-in-law has a smart house, and when we were dog sitting for them, there was always a concern about the lights going on and off at different times, and the temperature being up and down, and the cameras everywhere. So I just want to know what you think the security issues will be, and kind of how they're going to be addressed.
Hey, Ken, just a second. That sounds like the Hotel California. So that'd be awesome. Anyway.
Sure. So obviously I'm not a lawyer, and so I can't give legal advice. I'm just going to say it's going to be a pretty big issue. I think already there's been a couple stories about rogue, kitchen appliances sending out spam messages. And so the only thing I say is, we have to think about these things. I usually talk about it as it relates to privacy policy, as a developer, privacy policy, terms of services. But also, and I think this is something else to take to heart is, again, just from a person creating it, is we have to think a lot more about those issues than we do, even at a basic level. Again, was just doing a talk last week and had someone from the Federal Trade Commission coming up and talking about infringements and how you'll get fined $16,000 per violation if you don't follow these certain privacy concerns and or privacy policies. So there's a lot on the table. There's a lot at stake, especially with everything that's happened in the last year, right? with the government itself. So probably not a super concise answer for you, other than we just have to really take the time to cover ourselves there as people building these apps itself.
Anybody see Her, the movie? So imagine falling in love with your house. It'd be interesting. Anybody else? Any other questions for Ken before we move on to the next presentation? Kind of the next phase of our beta 2. All right, thanks. Thanks, Ken. Nice.